And this is Dr. Latasha McElwain giving an overview for my course at Southern New Hampshire University nonprofit course. I am going to give a brief overview talking about discussion one and what is required for the first week of classes. So, for the first week of class with the discussion is about nonprofit administration. So when we're talking about nonprofit administration, and let me go back before I even talk about that and say that the full course at Southern New Hampshire University is HSE 320, Human Services Organization System. So that's the course that I'm actually teaching. And so I just want to give an update and want to go through a few of these over the next few weeks that students would be able to jump in and look at these discussion questions and be able to get kind of a mindset of what is expected and what's going to be happening next throughout the process of doing this particular course. So discussion question one for week one is talking about nonprofit administration. So basically, the first part of this brief introduction is going to be you giving an introduction of yourself to the class. Want to talk about things like your major, anything you would like to share with the class about yourself. Also, you can address the prompt below, which is the nonprofit administration prompt. So basically, you're going to go ahead and identify two unique characteristics that make a nonprofit administrator different from other agency management positions. So that would be, i.e., when we're talking about business, or we're talking about organization, are we talking about government organizations for the most part, what makes them different? In addition, some of the specific one legal or ethical issue specifically that nonprofit administrators would likely encounter in the position and it as it relates to budgeting and funding. So that's something big to talk about as well. And then in your response to your classmates, you're going to kind of further the discussion, identify specific decisions that the nonprofit administration would have to make when he or she encounters legal and ethical issues outlined outlined by your peers. So basically, you can utilize the ethical standards and the ethical standards for human services professionals. You can use that in order to help you, through this course and help you kind of review some of the information. It'll help you with your responses also. But one of the things that I want you to make sure that you're mindful of is when you're doing your introduction, you are giving us a good idea of who you are as a person. You can add some things in there that you like and things that you kind of really have learned along the way, being in your programs for the most part and being in your courses. And then when we get to the part about identifying the unique characteristics that make a nonprofit administrator different from other agencies, management positions, I want you to think about, the specific things that nonprofit administrators have to deal with versus in a regular business, like a for-profit business, what they, may not have to deal with. So a lot of times I tell people, okay, when we're thinking about a nonprofit administrator in a business, they have to think about lots of things. And a big thing they have to think about is, okay, how am I approaching society? Not only how I'm approaching society, but how are things looking within my agency? How am I able to make sure that everything is managing well on the financial side, the business side of things, making sure that we are actually carrying out our mission, make sure that we're actually making sure that we're putting out the services and making sure we're rendering those services. So a lot of different things to think about when we talk about the nonprofit administrator position and what it entails that could be a little bit different along the lines when we're talking about, just regular agency management, like government agencies or business for the most part. There are a lot of different dynamics there. And so I always like to tell people when you're thinking about being in a position or that you're working with someone in the position that is a nonprofit administrator, they have a lot of balls to juggle and a lot of things to keep up in the air as they're going. They have to realize that, okay, we still have to fundraise. We still have to look to make sure that we are fulfilling our grant duties because we did get this $1 million grant in. So, there are a lot of things to think about in terms of what a nonprofit administrator have to be mindful of, along with the normal things they would be mindful of, such as the employees and making sure we're retaining those employees and making sure we're just being a little bit more mindful of the culture of how we do things within the agency and things of that nature, which are some of the same things you would see in a private for-profit organization, but there's sometimes more stress and more strain depending on who the person is, how the organization is ran, which organization it actually is. That's the nonprofit. So, there are a lot of dynamics there that I want you guys to think about and dive into. And then thinking about the legal and the ethical aspect of things, what are some of the things they may encounter? They may encounter a lot, of course. You have to make sure that all the funds that are being set aside for this are being used for this. All the funds that have been donated to the company for this is being used for this, So the nonprofit situation is very interesting when it comes to ethical and legal parts of the transactions and things of that. Even to when we get to finances, we have to think more about, okay, what is it that a nonprofit administrator may experience dealing with the finances piece of things versus in a I would say a regular business, you may have a whole finance department. In a nonprofit, you may not have that full finance department, or the finance department is there, but they have to be as stringent on the grant money as well, because you have to make sure that you're using the money exactly for what the grant is saying it's for. So a lot of times there are a lot of, things to think about when it comes down to budgeting and come down to funding. So I wanted to share that piece as well. Now, when we're thinking about responding back to our peers, we definitely want to make sure that we're listening to what they're saying and kind of hearing them out all the way, and then also being able to give that feedback to them that will help them understand understandably, that when individuals come across these concerns, or administrators come across these concerns in the nonprofit world, there are things that go on that may be a little bit different from the for-profit world. So just wanted to put that out there. That is the first discussion question of the week, and it is talking about nonprofit administration. And again, it is for the course that I teach at Southern New Hampshire University, HSE 320, Human Services Organizational Systems. All right, thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed.